Hello everyone, welcome back to My Hero Academia Podfics. This will be the continuation of Research to Rescue. This will be Part 5, Chapter 5, entitled, What the Actual Fuck Do You Think You're Doing, Izuku? The villain attack really took a lot of energy out of him, and he was already tired from the extra work and the more training hours that Hisashi'd been assigning the last few days. Killing the assigned target wasn't too hard for him, though. It was easy. Just like changing into his bloodied gray hoodie in an alleyway was easy. Walking with his hands still gloved to keep out of the cold and gripping the straps of his backpack in an attempt to hide the stain was easy. Keeping his mouth buried in his scarf and his hood pulled up was easy and warm, thanks to the cold weather. Realizing Hisashi wouldn't be pleased if he figured out Izuku was so close to a hero wasn't as easy, though. Knowing that if Hisashi thought Izuku was that close to asking a hero for help wasn't easy. Walking home after that wasn't easy. Standing on the sidelines of an active villain attack was much harder than it should have been. Izuku is a villain. It's not uncommon to witness attacks from the Dire or small fry groups connected to them while out and about, even if heroes didn't really know that. It was even more common in neighborhoods or towns where the Dire had most of their presence and a base. Izuku had even participated in a few when Hisashi wanted information on how well a newly connected group operated with Dire members. But this specific villain was the sludge villain from earlier. Not a Dire member if he openly attacked Izuku, suffocating a blonde kid in a middle school uniform. Maybe the villain escaped from authorities after All Might turned him over. He was stored in a plastic soda bottle after all. The street was blocked off and civilians were separated from trouble by wooden police barriers. Heroes were just standing defensively as fires, most likely caused by the villain, burned. Izuku could hardly hear them, but they commented amongst each other that their quirks were useless on the formless sludge. Izuku couldn't blame them. All Might could take the guy out with the wind from a punch, while his own hands were useless. Most of the heroes had quirks that had the physical ability to land on something and do damage. It would put the kid at risk if they tried. The kid who was currently trying to spark explosions from his hands, fighting back against the thing trying to take control, and whose eyes were darting around. They were full of fear. Fear wasn't a foreign concept to Izuku, and most everyone really, but it was a common one to him. He'd felt it when he faced Hisashi, being separated from his mother, fighting the occasional hero. He'd seen it in the eyes of people who accidentally witnessed his work, and he'd been the source of it for all of his targets before they stopped feeling entirely. Something in this boy's face, half covered in sludge and surrounded by fires were just getting hotter, made it difficult to ignore. It was desperate, all-consuming, the kind of fear in the eyes of someone who thought or knew that they were going to die and were trying to stop it. Coming from a kid made it so much worse. The death of anyone under 18 is something Izuku had never and hoped to never see. Most members refused that type of job anyway. The Dire didn't associate with minors, and Izuku was the only exception because of Hisashi. Not that many Dire members actually know that, but because of this, he's never seen that expression on a child's face. It made him want to make it stop. Maybe at least try to help the boy until a hero could give some real help. Try to be a hero for a moment and not let some kid die. It was better than doing nothing. However, there were consequences if he tried. Without thinking over about why Izuku should not run out and try to be some sort of hero, his feet were already moving, straight into the fray and trouble. He was already sliding his backpack off as he ran and hurtled it right at the villain's face, allowing distraction for the villain to momentarily release the kid's face and the boy to take a breath of air. The kid's face, with fiery red eyes and wild hair, turned into a snarl. "Idiot," he hissed out, his tone thoroughly pissed off. Izuku's hand shot out and grabbed the boy's exposed wrist, trying to pull him back. It worked partly because the villain was surprised at this development, and the boy was trying to push away with the attacker at the same time. Izuku pivoted his foot and held his free arm to his side. He swept it upwards until it was in front of him, hand pointed up like a gun. He pretended to fire, and a blast of air shot forward. Not the same amount of power as All Might's, or even his normal two-handed version of the move, but enough to blow the villain off at the kid and backwards, his arm holding the kid's hand so he didn't get blown away with it. The total action took maybe a minute, probably less, but it felt like forever. The villain was forming again, and Izuku heard heroes warning him. There was a moment, the world froze, and All Might was there again. Izuku snapped out of it and was grabbed by the boy's wrist. Could he really be called a kid? He had to be Izuku's age. And they started running for the sidelines at the other end of the battlefield, managing to scoop up his backpack as they passed. All Might shouted something, a smash attack maybe, and then air had propelled the two forward. Izuku landed hard on the ground, with the boy just beside him, spitting curses as they got up. Rain had started falling, and Izuku looked up at the sky briefly. All Might had a smash strong enough to change the weather, honestly. Unsurprising, considering he was the #1 hero in the circuit. When the short burst of rain had stopped, All Might turned to look at Izuku and the kid he just saved. Izuku stared back, then looked just beyond the hero at the crowd. More heroes were behind him. Multiple managed to restrain the villain before he could reform, sticking him in a much stronger container with the help of a few others. A few others were walking in Izuku and the kid's direction. Some of them looked worried, and others had a mixture of worry and anger, probably directed at the punk kid in a hoodie that attempted to go up against a fucking villain by himself. Then he caught sight of the people behind them. Civilians, emergency responders, written reporters, a camera crew. Oh no. Recorded. Those people recorded him. The news reporters recorded him. Hisashi regularly watches the news. He was so fucked. So fucked. He was going to die, holy shit. Shit, what was he even thinking trying to be a hero? Hisashi hates heroes. He hates you trying to be a hero. What the fuck, Izuku? Remember the last time you brought up heroes around him? You shouldn't have even gotten caught on camera. Hisashi warned him about this. Fuck. He was going to die. He was going to die. No. They'd want to interview this kid, and him first, right? Edit the report together before airing it. He'd have to slip away before someone tried to interview him, or get a clear shot of his face on camera. Maybe they didn't even see his face. Maybe Hisashi was in a meeting and missed the broadcast if they did air it live. He could throw out his hoodie and snatch a new one at a store before he got back to base. Ditch the singed notebook. Would Hirayama take it and burn it for him? He'd do it himself, but that'd take time. He's already been out long enough as it is. He could pretend like nothing happened, give a curt report if everything's fine, and leave. It would be fine. Moments of pause, which could have actually been just a second, passed before Izuku snapped out of his stare to get back to his feet and yank his hood down. Slipping on his backpack with practiced ease, he looked up in time to see the kid get up to get a closer look at him. "Oi," he hissed, and Izuku jumped and looked the kid in the eyes, red. He hadn't seen red eyes like that since Kachan. "I didn't need your help." Izuku didn't answer. His mind was too much of a panicking mess to form proper words and not spill out an entire speech. The boy seemed to get angry that Izuku wasn't talking. It showed in his face. "Well, aren't you going to say something?" Now he just sounded pissed. Izuku stared, mouth slightly open, trying to form at least some kind of response. A couple of heroes. Was that Kamui Woods? Izuku couldn't seem to see. The world was getting blurry. They'd walked up. One had taken the boy's side before he could get any angrier, and the other had started talking to Izuku, lecturing him on the dangers of walking into a villain fight, how unregulated use of his quirk was breaking anti-vigilantism laws, that they would need to make sure that he was physically all right via a paramedic and needed to get in contact with his parents. Izuku was purely zoned out of it. He wasn't actively listening. "My boy." That was All Might's voice. It sounded so close. "Wait, you're the kid from earlier." Izuku could see the hero standing beside Kamui. Worry creased in his face, even though he was still mostly wearing his trademark smile. Then he remembered cameras are usually always pointed at the #1. The panic doubled and his breath hitched. "I have to go." Izuku's voice shook and cracked. Kamui looked concerned. Maybe it was hard to tell with the mask. "My father will worry. I'm past curfew, and I'm sorry, I have to leave." Smoke was curling in his throat each second, and he was sure that tendrils were slipping past his lips. "I'm sorry, we have to make sure you're unhurt," Kamui started, in a tone that was clearly trying to calm Izuku down from an unexpected panic attack. Izuku shook his head a bit too hard to pass as casual, and he took a hesitant step back. "No." A plume of smoke slipped out of his mouth. "I can't. I'm fine, really. It's my father. He'll be angry if I'm late, and I'm sorry." Before Izuku could find anything new to say, he'd already bolted in the other direction at full speed. As far as he knew, he lost anyone that was trying to follow him to the train station, leaving his mind to think of what-ifs the entire way home. At the very least, Aizawa was confused when Rabbit showed up at his door. Crusher was out. He normally was. Anyway, so having the kid there wasn't the problem. The problem, however, was the look of nervousness on Rabbit's face that turned into panic as he walked into the room, and Aizawa closed the door, dropping his backpack on the bed and starting to dig through it. "There's a stain on your jacket." Aizawa started. It was the crook of his elbow, dried and brown. It wasn't his work jacket, so it could have been his target's. Specks of green were littered on his right arm and parts of the top of his hand. Rabbit stopped digging and immediately pulled his jacket off, chucking it away and going back to desperate digging. not caring that now his tie was crooked and his shirt was not neatly tucked anymore. "Kid, are you all right?" "I fucked up." The curse wasn't uncommon. He'd heard plenty of his students curse when they didn't know he was around, but Rabbit's shaking tone betrayed the last few weeks of the calm and collected persona Rabbit usually had. This was panicked, paranoid, desperate. It was terrifying to think about what spooked him so badly. The kid's hands were shaking as he pulled a notebook from his backpack, shoving it in Aizawa's direction. Smoke was trailing from one side of his mouth, and he said, "Take this and hide it. Burn it. Whatever. Just don't let Hisashi see it." Aizawa sent a cautious look between Rabbit and the notebook before taking it. He gave another look to confirm it was all right, then flipped through it like it was a mess out of order. Notes, quick handwriting. There wasn't really a hard surface to write on. Observations, quirk theories, on-the-fly sketches. Aizawa passed page after page until landing in the middle, seeing All Might's signature scrawled across 2 pages. "It's just a notebook, kid. What's wrong with it?" Aizawa watched Rabbit run his still-gloved hands through his hair and hold tight once he reached the back of his head. Rabbit was obviously on edge, and Aizawa needed to know why. "The signature." Aizawa raised his eyebrows. "I'll get in even more trouble if Hisashi finds out I was speaking with a hero, not fighting them, let alone fucking All Might. He'll take it the wrong way. He won't believe me if I say it was an accident, and that I didn't know he was there. It's my job to know where heroes are patrolling, but All Might is a loose variable, and I can't ever track him down, so how the hell am I supposed to know where he was? I'm not psychic. If he wanted me to be, he'd have made me that way, but he didn't." Rabbit was pacing slightly, gray smoke building in the top of the room, only to be swept out by the AC. Aizawa just let the kid speak, as he sat down on the bed next to the backpack. "All Might signed the notebook after I got attacked by the sludge villain thing on the way to this mission, and he saved me, and shit, Hisashi might be angry that I had to be saved by someone. I'm supposed to be strong, I can't—" "Do you hate All Might?" Aizawa interrupted before Rabbit could freak out any more than he was. Rabbit turned on his heel to face him almost immediately. Wide-eyed and head shaking, he said, No, I couldn't. He's my favorite hero, actually." "A favorite hero? Well, who would have thought that a villain had a favorite hero? Wait. Now that didn't make much sense, did it? Most villains and all the Silver Dire members, and Aizawa had the pleasure of meeting, had a distinct hatred of heroes and do-gooders that ruin their plans. Maybe Rabbit had a different definition of like. The kid did analyze. He could be talking about admiring the hero's strength quirk and not his penchant for doing good. Aizawa then registered another issue that Rabbit was having. "All right. So without this," Aizawa raised the notebook in his lap a bit, "you'll still get in trouble?" Rabbit nodded. Trouble for what? Rabbit had let his hair go at this point and wrung his hands together. Then he noticed the gloves and quickly took them off to stuff them in his bag. The kid answered so quickly Aizawa barely had time to process what he was saying. I saved someone today on my way back from a job. It was the same villain who attacked me, and I don't know. He was just so scared, and I don't know what happened, or why I even tried to help. I should have walked away, let the heroes handle it or something. I mean, it'd be fine if it was just the attack, but there were cameras out there, and I'm sure they caught Kamui Woods and All Might trying to talk to me. Oh, Hisashi's going to kill me for this." "He's not going to kill you," Aizawa said in a calm yet casual tone. "You're a valuable asset to Silver Dire." "I'm not valuable," Rabbit hissed in a way that sounded like he'd said it many times already. "I'm replaceable. Hisashi's own words, multiple times. My only actual value is how much time tech has spent on the quirk development, and even then, there's probably more successes now that are more loyal to him than I'll ever be. I don't know. I don't follow their work anymore." Aizawa nodded absently as he listened. Rabbit ran a single hand through his hair again. "He hates heroism. He used to hate when I talked about heroes like I adored them. I did adore them. And as a kid, I told him I wanted to be one." Rabbit got a distant look in his eyes. Aizawa didn't need anything else to figure out that Midori Hisashi was Rabbit's worst influence, despite being his employer, and it only made Aizawa hate the man even more than he did before. He hated having to stand to the side during this, too. Aizawa couldn't afford pissing off the head of the Silver Dire, not if he wanted to live another day. A phone buzzed, and Rabbit jumped, looking at his backpack. The phone buzzed again, and he went for it, pulling out a simple flip phone and reading the message on the screen. Rabbit's face paled. I have to go, give my report to Hisashi. I'll see you later." Rabbit picked up his backpack and quickly left while adjusting his tie, leaving the door open and his hoodie abandoned on the ground. Aizawa now had a new, shiny set of questions to go along with his still unanswered ones. The question of how long Rabbit had actually been here. The assassin persona appeared 3 years ago, but Rabbit spoke as if he'd existed in the Silver Tower much longer. The question of what exactly he meant when talking about his quirks. Time spent developing. What did that mean? Was it quirk therapy? Training? The question of his loyalty being lower than others, despite his rank. Hisashi had to have trust in Rabbit's abilities and loyalties to put him in a position of strength like that. It made no sense. Add in the facts and everything became a mess. The kid wanted to be a hero when he was younger. He saved someone today. And, according to past conversations, was a villain who was unhappy working as a villain. What exactly was this kid? At least Rabbit trusted him with hiding a notebook that could lead to more problems. It seems like Rabbit didn't need any more of that in his life. Though there was an awful pit in his stomach after seeing the expression Rabbit had when he read the message. Fear. I don't have a good feeling about this, Aizawa said to the empty air in the recorder. 2 days later, Aizawa had already subtly turned the notebook over to the police and was assigned a stakeout mission, and to meet the person he was working with on site. Though he wasn't expected to reach the assigned spot, a vacant apartment building with blown-out windows, only to find Rabbit already setting up shop, laying out a thin green fleece blanket on the cement flooring and throwing abandoned couch pillows in 2 spots before looking at Aizawa. The kid looked tired. With the top half of his mask sitting on the ground next to his backpack and his hood up, Aizawa could see a bandage poking over the collar of his shirt and the red scarf. A plain band-aid over the bridge of his nose and one on his forehead, butterfly bandage on his cheek. His lip was split, and he moved like his left arm was hurt. The bags under his eyes were heavier than earlier. The panic was gone and replaced by something Aizawa couldn't place. The kid was obviously not all right. Rabbit dropped himself next to the pillows by his backpack, close to the window. Aizawa crossed the room and sat across from him, dropping his backpack nearby. It was late January, so Aizawa had pulled on a thermal shirt underneath the suit that he had, a gray scarf and an open jacket all over it as well. Rabbit had just the scarf. Aren't you cold? Aizawa asked while they were in the middle of some silence, watching over the warehouse in the middle of a closed construction site next door, waiting for any suspicious activity or leaving trucks. Rabbit shrugged. I'm wearing extra shirts underneath, plus my quirk keeps me warmer when it's cold out. There was a beat of silence before Aizawa heard a bang and a thump from inside the apartment. He went to go stand up, but Rabbit grabbed his arm and kept him from doing so. It's just strays. As if on cue, 2 cats bolted into the room at top speed. One stopped in the middle of the room, and one barreled right into Aizawa's stomach. Rabbit let Aizawa's arm go, so the man could situate himself on the ground again, but also to laugh at Aizawa's clear surprise. This apartment building is old, but it has some warm spots, and it's usually dry. Lots of stray dogs and cats hang around here because people don't. Understandable. With that, the 2 settled in. More cats seemed attached and attracted to the warm corner, leading a few scattered around them on the wood. A calico had stretched itself over Aizawa's lap. A tabby in a gray short hair took over Rabbit's. The boy idly petting either one while looking between the warehouse and the cats. It was quiet and almost peaceful. The sound of the city was quiet, and the building settled with the cold. Lights came from the street lamps below. The stakeout spot was just high enough that the yellow-orange glow only hit the ceiling. Only 2 hours had passed before Rabbit's head had bolted up, and he jumped slightly. He was dozing off. Aizawa decided to strike up a conversation. So how old are you anyways? He asked, and Rabbit shrugged. Best guess? 14? Aizawa raised both eyebrows. Best guess? You don't know how old you are? Rabbit shrugged again. He did that a lot. But this was still surprising. Aizawa knew plenty of students, counting the days until their birthdays or itching to turn 18. So what kind of kid didn't know how old they were? Lost track after a while. Not that it matters. Crusher told me that Silver Dyer doesn't hire children, Aizawa had said, and Rabbit stopped petting the cats and just froze. Then he looked up to meet Aizawa's eyes. They don't hire anyone under 18. I'm an exception. Izashi's orders. Aizawa gave a slow, understanding nod that stopped with his head still tilted up. It lowered when he asked his next question. You're pretty close with Izashi, right? He gives you all of your commands directly. Rabbit went back to petting the cats. Kind of. Yukio is usually the one who sends them. He picks the jobs, though. To be honest, I don't like him. He doesn't like me. It's mutual. He keeps me around because he knows he... Rabbit paused for a moment. He knows he can count on my analysis hobby. Aizawa gave a short, one-note laugh. It's a hobby? Started out that way. Rabbit trailed off like he wanted to continue the story but had a second thought. It took a few minutes for him to actually start speaking again. When I was a kid, I really wanted to be a hero, like All Might level hero. Rabbit gave a soft laugh at some memory. I used to stay up and watch interviews and everything. My mom even got me an All Might hoodie for my birthday when I was 6. I didn't have it for long, but... He shook his head to dismiss something. I wanted to be one, so I took notes from recordings and interviews and wrote them down so that I could be the best hero I could once my quirk came in, and I could go to a hero school, even when we found out I couldn't ever have a quirk, I still did it. Then I was put into the Dire by Hisashi. He caught me taking notes on Dire members, mostly the tech team, so now I take notes on heroes for the villains. Now that was a story. The whole villain wanted to be a hero, but they couldn't, so they turned to evil story was more common than people were led to believe. But everything else was spinning. It took Aizawa a moment to process the 2 points from it all. 1. Rabbit was put into the Dire, not hired or signed up. Made it seem like Rabbit had no other choice. 2. Judging by wording, Rabbit was diagnosed quirkless, yet still here he stood, with a pretty strong quirk for a kid his age, even if he hadn't seen the full extent of the kid's power yet. It was all too strange for Aizawa to not comment on, though he decided to veer away from the quirk talk for now. So what made you an exception to the hiring rules, then, if he found out about your note hobby after the fact? Rabbit instantly put all his attention on the cats. Focused more on petting than talking to Aizawa. It was clear he was thinking something over, so Aizawa let it be, leaving silence and letting it wash over them for another hour and watching the building instead. The whole time Rabbit barely glanced at the warehouse and cast a few glances in Aizawa's direction, too. Can I ask you a question? Aizawa's eyebrows raised, but he shrugged. Sure. Why'd you join Silver Dire? Ah, a question Aizawa wasn't exactly prepared for. Perfect. Aizawa looked out the window instead of answering, hoping it would look like he was thinking the question over. And he certainly wasn't trying to find a bullshit reason that'd fly by this kid. Because joining this job means that I can help those who I care about. With the pay? Rabbit egged, and Aizawa glanced at him. The kid had curious eyes and a raised eyebrow. Yes. Hitting hard times, I sent my paycheck to my family, at home. A lie, a pure and total lie. The times are stable, and the money doesn't even reach them. It's not the best livelihood if you're trying to take care of your family. Lots of things could happen, especially if you piss off Hisashi. And what would Hisashi do exactly if I pissed him off? Kill me? Kill them. Silence. Then Aizawa decided to switch topics and ask more questions. So, you liked heroes. Any reason you don't like them now? Rabbit sighed and shrugged again, hunching forward slightly so his elbows were on his knees, the cats sheltered underneath his chest. I didn't stop liking them. I still really like heroes, actually. Really? This was more an astonished tone than skeptical, and Rabbit just shrugged. My views kind of changed on them, but I still like them. So then what are your views now? Rabbit took a moment before answering. I used to think that heroes saved everybody, that they always find and protect everyone who got caught by villains or criminals. Keep them safe and make sure they're happy. Aizawa resisted the urge to raise his eyebrows at this, and Rabbit caught the look, though. I was 6, so cut me some slack. Aizawa gave him a carry-on nod. Rabbit shrugged and looked out the window. Could have been a month or maybe a year after meeting Hisashi before I figured out that they don't. They help a lot of people, yeah, but there's still too many that never get saved, that never even get looked for. As I got older, it became more true. People who don't get found, they're stuck suffering because some selfish dickweed of a villain decided he needed them for his bullshit tests. Rabbit seemed to see that a certain point and was insulting someone that Aizawa didn't know. The boy calmed a second later, with the flash of anger gone now, and he sighed loudly. What I'm saying is that heroes either don't or can't save everyone, so I stopped believing that everyone gets a happy ending. Aizawa stayed silent for a long time before finally letting the teacher part of him think of what to do or say next. Do you still want to be a hero? Rabbit only gave a short, bitter laugh. Does it matter? Depends. Does being a hero matter to you? Rabbit was silent before he shrugged. Aizawa shook his head and sighed. And Rabbit's watch beeped. It was time to leave, for the next pair of Dia members could take their notes and roles somewhere nearby, a way to keep vigilant eyes on the area. Aizawa nudged the cat off of his lap and he stood up, hands in his pockets, and then he picked up his backpack and started to leave, stopping in the doorway to speak and then disappearing into the hall. Think it over, kid. You've got plenty of time. All right, everyone, this concludes Chapter 5 of Research to Rescue. Chapter 6 will be next. Hope you guys are still enjoying this one, and as always, thank you so much for listening.